This conference will now be recorded.
So in the previous session, we have discussed about iterative statements, and we have discussed what exactly an iterative statement and what is the use, and what iterative statements that we have in Apex programming, and how to use these iterative statements to execute a piece of code repeatedly till the required number of times we have discussed. And as part of iterative statements, we have discussed while iterative statement and how it works, how to use this while iterative statement. We have discussed with few practical use cases also, and we have discussed about the do while iterative statement also with some practical use cases. And yesterday we have discussed about okay for iterative statement also theoretically, but practical we haven't discussed here. Okay, now so today we'll see the practical use case of for iterative statement, and then we'll move forward to a new feature, arrays. So that already we have discussed for also one of the iterative statement which is used to execute a block of statements, a group of statements repeatedly till the required number of times. But the specialty is for loop provides an optimized way of using iterative statements. For loop provides an optimized way of using iterative statements. That means in the previous sessions we have discussed upon using that other iterative statements like while and the do while, there we are using three statements separately. We are defining the variables and initializing the variables in a separate line. We are checking the conditions in a separate line. We are incrementing or decrementing the value in separate line. But instead of using that, we can able to use all these three statements into a single statement, and how it works, what is the execution flow, yesterday we have discussed. Okay, now, so in this case, instead of writing that all these three statements, variable definition and initialization, conditions, and the increment or decremental part. Instead of writing these three statements in three different lines, we can combine these three statements into a single line by separating a semicolon. So that we can able to reduce the number of lines of code, we can reduce the compilation time, we can reduce the execution time, so that we can improve the application performance as well. So we can make our program look like simple. Now, so for that reason, we are using the help of for iterative statement. So for is also one of the iterative statement which provides an optimized way of using iterative statements. Okay. Now, so let me give the syntax here. Yesterday we have discussed syntax and execution flow also, but I haven't given the notes yesterday. Now let's make a note of these points here, and then we'll see with practical use case. Now, let the syntax for, we can write initialization part, conditions part, increment or decremental part. And here we can write the statements. Now, for is an iterative statement which is used to execute a block of statements repeatedly till the required number of times. Now, it is a pre-checking iterative statement which provides an optimized way of using iterative statements so that we can improve the application performance. So that we can improve the application performance. Done? Now, so let's see the practical use case. So let me take this use case here. How can we implement? I want to generate the mathematical table for the given number. I want to write an Apex program to print the mathematical table for the given number. So whatever the number that we have supplied, for that number, I want to generate the mathematical table. By using while iterative statement, already we have discussed this part. Now, if I'm using this for iterative statements, okay, how many lines of code that we need to write to execute this program, we'll see practically here. Now, now tell me as part of this program, how many variables we have to define? Two variables. The first variable is used to store the number for which you want to generate the mathematical table. And the second variable will be to store the counter variable, which should be initializing with 1. So these are the two variables we have to define. Both will be of type numerical. The first variable is used to store the number for which you want to generate the mathematical table. And the second variable is used to store the counter value, which should be initialized with 1. Okay, now let's see. How can we write this a piece of code in order to implement this functionality through by using for iterative statement? Let me go to my Salesforce org. I'm going to my Salesforce org now. So let's go to the execute anonymous window. Now I would like to use that for loop. I'm using the for iterative statement. So variable definitions, initializations, everything can be done inside for loop only here. I'm defining the variable. Integer max number. I'm assigning the value some 29. That means this is a number or this is a number for which I want to generate mathematical table. And then I'm assigning the counter variable value as 1. Because whenever we are generating the mathematical table, we are start multiplying the number starting from 1 onwards. So that I'm defining this counter variable which should be initialized with 1. Now, what is the condition part here? Till what number you would like to iterate now? Hmm. Till the counter value. Counter value less than or equals to 10. I would like to multiply the number till we are reaching to the counter value 10. So now observe this one. This is the first part. I have given the semicolon. That means with this one initialization part is done. From here condition part has been started. Now I have given semicolon. That means condition part is also done. Every time the counter value has to be incremented by 1. So that I'm incrementing this counter value here by using counter plus plus. Now I would like to write the statement system.debug. I want to print that mathematical format here. I want this format. Already we know how to print this format, already we have discussed. I want to show this number here. That means max number. And then I would like to show a star symbol here. For that one, I'm using plus. Next, I want to show this number. That means with which number you are going to multiply. That means counter. I'm placing this. After that, we have equality symbol here. So that I'm indicating equality. And then we are indicating the number. Whenever we are multiplying these two, whatever the result is available, that result I would like to represent. So I would like to multiply the max number with counter value here. I'm indicating max number into counter. That's it. Over. Only 2 lines of code. So now if it is a while iterative statement, we have written some lengthy statements over here. We have written some lengthy code, like we have used one line, second line, third, and the fourth, 4 lines of code. But as part of this, for iterative statement, only 2 lines of code here. So that we can able to combine okay, initialization part, conditions part, and increment or decremental part within a single statement itself. So that we can reduce the number of lines of code as well. Okay. Now click on execute. Select the debug only checkbox. Now we can see the mathematical table for the number whatever we have specified. So now for this 29 here we are generating the mathematical table by multiplying this number till 10. Okay. Suppose if you want to multiply this number till 20, then what we can do? Hmm. Counter less than or equals to 20. That's it. When I click on execute, let's see the result. Now we can see the mathematical table which will be generating to multiply this number till 20 over here. Okay. Now, suppose if you want to give a different number, I would like to specify the number like as some 76. I want to generate the mathematical table for the number 76. Then we can execute. Any number, whatever you want, we can specify. Based on your application requirement, we can specify that number here, we can generate the mathematical table. Okay. Now, make a note of this code. Done with this? Clear up to this one? Next. Next one. So now we will see a new feature, arrays. So we have to understand what exactly an array, what it indicates, what is the use of arrays, how to define arrays in Apex programming, what is the syntax we used to follow. Upon defining an array in Apex programming, what will happen behind the screen? How can we manage the elements inside the arrays? How to store the elements? How to retrieve the elements from array? We'll see practically. And what limitations that we have in arrays. To overcome these limitations, what are the advanced features or what are the enhanced facilities that we have in Apex programming? We'll see that. Okay, now. So let me explain. For example, I'm defining a variable. For example, I'm defining a variable. This is a variable. Integer customer code. I'm defining a variable with the name customer code, which is of type integer. Now tell me what is the meaning of this statement? This statement will be informing to the Apex compiler, dear compiler, user has defined a variable with the name customer code which is of type integer. So please reserve 4 bytes of memory for this variable and assign that memory location for this variable and store the default value as null. That is the meaning of this statement that already we know. So because for each integer variable, Salesforce will be assigning how much memory? 4 bytes. It is allocating 4 bytes of memory. So in this case, as soon as whenever we are writing the code, now this statement will inform to the compiler to assign 4 bytes of memory to store the customer code value. Now immediately the Apex compiler is going to be reserving 4 bytes of memory. It will reserve 4 bytes of memory. So this is 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes of memory. Now this memory will be pointing to this variable. Whatever the memory it has reserved, now this memory will be pointing to this variable. Now inside this memory location, it will store the default value as null. It will store the default value as null. This is the functionality will be happening behind the screen. So upon defining this variable, so it will be allocating that 4 bytes of memory automatically. In that memory, it will store the default value as null. Okay, now. So now later, I want to assign some value for this variable. After writing few lines of code, later I'm assigning some value. Customer code equals to 56900 214. Now, what is the meaning of this statement now? This statement is informing to the Apex compiler, dear compiler, user has assigned a value 56900 214 for the variable customer code. Now, in that case, whatever the memory we have reserved for the customer code variable, that means this is a variable. For this customer code, already we have reserved some memory. So, please store this value inside the memory location reserved for this variable. Okay, please store this value inside that memory location reserved for the variable. so that whatever the value we have prepared, this value will be storing inside that memory location over here. This value will be storing inside that memory location. But previously we have the value what? Null. That null value will be getting erased. In that place, it will be replacing the new value, that is 569000214. Okay. Now, for example, after writing few more lines of code, I'm assigning a new value for the customer code variable. That is 79000, okay, 264. I'm assigning a new value for this variable. The variable is same customer code. Okay, now I'm going to be storing a different value inside that. What is the meaning of this statement now? The same meaning here. That means please store this value 790000264 inside the memory location reserved for the variable customer code. So this value will be getting resides over here. But already it is having one value. Then what about that value here? Hmm. What about this value? That value will be getting erased and that value will be replacing with the new value which we have assigned just now. Whatever the value we have assigned, now this new value will occupy that memory space automatically. Previous value will be lost. Because in that 4 bytes of memory, only one integer value can be stored. Whenever we are assigning a new value, previous value will be erased, and in that place, the new value will occupy the memory space automatically. Now, so in this case, what happened? Whenever I'm defining a normal variable, okay, whenever I'm defining a normal variable, a variable can store only one value at a time. Initially, the variable is holding the value null. Later, we have assigned the value 569000214. Now, this value will be replacing that old value. And then later, after few more lines of code, we have assigned one more new value. This value will replace that old value here. So that means a normal variable can store only one value at a time, not multiple. But in some cases, I have 10 customer codes are available. I have 10 customers. Each customer is having a separate customer code. So totally I have 10 customer codes are available. How can we store them? What can I do? Here each integer variable can store only one customer code. To store 10 customer codes, how many variables we have to define? 10 variables we have to define of type integer. Suppose if I'm having 100 customer codes, then how many variables? 100 variables. If I'm having 1000 variables, you have to define. That means the number of variables will be keep on increasing. We have to write some more lines of code to define 100 variables or 1000 variables or 1 lakh variables, which will be occupying some more lines of code, which will take some more characters. It will take more time to compile, it will take more time to execute, and ultimately it will be impacting on your application performance. So in this case, don't we have any possibility to store all these customer codes within a single variable itself? Instead of using multiple variables, instead of using a separate variable to store each customer code, can't we store all the customer codes within a single variable? Yes, there is a possibility. Then how can we do that? For that one, we have to use the help of a feature called as arrays. We have to use the help of a feature called as arrays. By using arrays, what we can do, we can store a collection of values inside a single variable itself. Okay, simply we can say arrays are nothing but the variables which are used to hold a collection of elements. Elements means values. Now, in that case here, okay, in that case, we are using the help of these arrays to store a group of elements within a single variable, so that you no need to define, okay, multiple variables. Just to define one single array. In that array we can store collection of elements also. Depends upon your requirement. It may be 10 elements, 20 elements, 100 elements, 1000 elements, whatever, anything, we can store those elements inside that. But there is a condition. Whenever we are going to be using these arrays, arrays are always allows us to store homogeneous elements. Arrays purely supports to store homogeneous elements. Homogeneous elements means same type of elements. Okay, same type of elements. Suppose inside the array, if I'm storing some 100 elements, then all the 100 elements will be of same data type. All the elements may be either integer, all the elements may be string type, all the elements may be id type, all the elements may be boolean type, all the elements may be account type, all the elements may be contact type, anything. Whatever the elements you are going to store, all the elements will be of same data type. That means arrays are purely allows us to store homogeneous elements. Heterogeneous elements will not be supporting by array. Heterogeneous elements means different types of elements. Like I have some 10 elements are available with me. Out of this 10, 4 elements are integer, 2 elements are string type, 2 elements are boolean type, 1 element a date type, 1 element time type. Total 10 elements are there, but array won't support. Okay, because different types of elements are available, array won't support. Arrays are always supports to store homogeneous elements. Only same data type of elements we can store inside the array. Now, in this case, how can we define an array in Apex programming? What is the syntax we used to follow to define an array? What each part in the syntax will describes, and what will happen behind the screen? How it will manage the elements? How to store? How to retrieve the elements from the array with the help of index positions? Now let me explain first. Then I will give the notes, and then we'll see the practical concept. Okay. Now let's see. Now I want to define an array. In order to define an array, we have to follow a specific syntax. So, what is the syntax we used to follow? Let me explain. Let's see the syntax. We have to specify data type, and then we can specify square braces, and then array name equals to new data type. Here we can specify the size. There is a syntax: data type and a square braces, and then array name equals to new data type. In the square braces, we have to specify size. This is the syntax we used to follow in order to define an array in Apex programming. Okay, now, then what exactly this syntax indicates, what parts are available? Now, let me explain each and every part one by one. The first part. Now, this is a data type part here. This data type is indicating what type of elements this array can store. So what type of elements you are going to store? It may be primitive type, it may be a subject type, anything we can specify. So in this case, this data type is indicating what type of elements the array can store. Inside that we can specify. Now, what type of elements? So what type of elements can we hold inside the array? That will be indicating by data type here. Okay, clear up to this one? Next, the second part, braces, square braces. Now this square braces is called as dimensions. The square braces is called as dimension. Then what exactly the dimension indicates? Basically, dimension is going to be informing to the Apex compiler, dear compiler, user has defined a variable. But this variable is not a normal variable. This is an array variable which can store a collection of elements inside that of this particular data type. So please calculate the required amount of memory. Based on the data type, based on the size, please calculate the required amount of memory and allocate the memory for this array to indicate that we are using dimensions. That means, for example, here, this is the data type and then array name. For example, let me explain. Data type, I'm indicating here some integer. For example, I'm not giving any braces over here, dimension. If I'm giving array name, like for example, if I'm giving the name as some C code. Now tell me this will be looking like as what? Integer C code. That means it's like as a normal variable here. Now, this is not a normal variable. I want to make it as an array. So that we have to specify square braces. Now, this square braces is indicating this is a array. This is not normal variable. Don't assign 4 bytes. Calculate the memory for this here. So we need to indicate. So that's what here is the difference. If I'm adding the dimensions, it is indicating to the Apex compiler, dear compiler, user has defined a variable, but this is not a normal variable which is storing one value. This is an array variable which can store some collection of elements. How many elements it can store? They have given the size. What type of elements they are going to store? They have given the data type. So based on the data type, based on the size, please calculate the memory and reserve the memory for this particular array. Okay, to indicate that we are using the help of these dimensions. Next, array name. That means here this part is indicating name of the array. Name of the array here. So with what name you would like to create the array, we can specify. Okay, next. Next part, new keyword. So now this new keyword is going to be taking care of memory allocation. Memory allocation will be taken care by the new keyword. Why? Because, for example, if I'm defining a normal variable integer type, there is a fixed size that is 4 bytes. But in this case, this is an array variable here, which can store a collection of elements of this particular type. Now, in this case, dimension is indicating please calculate the memory and allocate the memory here. Now, in that case, who will do that calculation here? Who will verify how much memory needs to be get allocated for this array? For that one, it is using new keyword. What this new keyword will do? New keyword is going to be collecting the data type. It will collect that array size. That means how many number of elements can be stored based on the data type, based on the size. It will do the calculation that much of memory will be reserving for this particular array. So the memory allocation will be always taken care by new keyword. Okay, next. The last part, size. Size indicates what? Number of elements can be stored inside the array. Can be stored. How many number of elements can be stored inside the array, that we can indicate with the help of this size. Size indicates number of elements. Now, so that means what? Whenever we are defining this array, there is a syntax we used to follow. We have to indicate the data type and then a dimension, specify the array name equals to new data type and the size. So now upon preparing the array, compulsorily we have to specify the size. Without the size, we can't define the array. That is a fundamental principle. Now, in this case, once a size has been defined, that will be fixed, which cannot be increased, which cannot be decreased at runtime. Because arrays are fixed size collections. Arrays are fixed size collections whose size cannot be grow, cannot be shrink at runtime. Whenever we are going to be defining the array, compulsorily we have to specify the size. If I am not passing the size, it will give the compilation error. Okay, it will show the compilation error. So your code will not get compiled. It will show the compilation error. Size will be the mandatory option over here. So without the size, we can't define. Now, so why it is enforcing me to specify the size? Because arrays are fixed size collection. Upon defining the array itself, upon writing this syntax itself, array will be Apex compiler will reserve the memory here. How much memory it has to reserve? Then in order to do that, it has to do the calculation. Data type and the size. Without the size, how it will calculate how much memory needs to be reserved? So that here it needs a size mandatorily. So upon defining the array, compulsorily we have to specify the size so that we can say arrays are fixed size collections whose size cannot be grow and cannot be shrink at runtime. Okay. Now, so in this case, upon defining that array size, if I'm giving some 10, so it can store 10 elements over here. Suppose, can I store 11th element inside the array? No, it won't support. When you try to add, it will show the error message. Boss, whatever the index that you have given, this is out of range. Already you are crossing that range over here. You have given the size as 10, but you are trying to storing 11th element so that it will be giving that exception messages as well. Okay, so that here arrays are purely fixed size collections whose size cannot be grow, cannot be shrink at runtime. Okay, clear? Now, so now let's see in this case how can I define an array. Whenever I'm defining an array, what will happen behind the screen? Let me explain now. Okay, understand the concept of the syntax of this array? Now, let's see. So now let me define an array here. I would like to define an array of type integer. I'm defining an array. Integer customer codes equals to new integer of 10. This is the array here. That means the data type and the dimension array name equals to new data type of size. I have given this a size as 10. Now tell me what is the meaning of this statement now? 10 customer codes of type what? Integer, right. Now that means what? We have defined an array with the name customer codes which can store 10 integer elements inside that. Okay, now. So in this case, what will happen now? Let's see. As soon as whenever we are writing this statement, immediately this particular dimension is informing to the Apex compiler, dear compiler, user has a defined a variable with the name customer code, but this is not normal variable, this is an array variable which can store 10 elements of type integer. So please calculate the required amount of memory and reserve this. Then immediately Apex compiler will be invoking this new keyword. New keyword will be counting that memory calculation. So now the new keyword is going to be verifying that what is the data type of this array and what is the size of this array. Based on that, it will calculate the memory. Now here this is the integer type. Total how many elements? 10 elements. Now tell me for each and every integer variable, how much memory needs to be get reserved? 4 bytes. Total how many elements over here? 10 elements. Total how much memory needs to be get reserved? 40 bytes. Okay, 40 bytes of memory has to be get reserved. Because we are going to be storing 10 elements of type integer, so each integer element will occupy the fixed size that is 4 bytes and total 10 elements. So 4 into 10, 40 bytes of memory will be reserved. Okay, now let's see here. This is a memory has been reserved. So this is a memory. It has reserved the 40 bytes of memory here. Total 40 bytes. So 40 bytes of memory has been reserved. Okay. Now, So now here this memory will be pointing to this particular array. So whatever the memory has been reserved, this memory will be pointing to this array. Now, so now this is a 40 bytes. In this 40 bytes, okay, how many elements we can store? 10 elements of type what? Integer. So whatever the memory that we have, this whole 40 bytes of memory will be dividing into 10 equal partitions. Because we can store 10 elements of type integer, each integer will require 4 bytes of memory. So that here it will divide this of 40 bytes of memory into 10 equal partitions. Now it will be dividing that. This is half of the partition here. It will be dividing this memory to equal partitions. Here also. Now, so whatever the memory that we have, this whole memory will be dividing into 10 equal partitions, where each partition will have 4 bytes of memory here. Each partition will have 4 bytes of memory. It is having 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes. This is 4 bytes. This is also 4 bytes. 4 bytes. Here also 4 bytes. This is also 4 bytes. 4 bytes, and then 4 bytes. So whatever the total memory space that we have, the whole memory has been divided into various equal partitions of size 4 bytes. So now here these are the 10 partitions. Once the 10 partitions are available, to recognize each and every partition, to identify each and every partition, it is allocating one index position. It is allocating the index position, which always starts from 0. This is the zeroth index position partition. This is the first index. This is the second index. This is the third index. This is the fourth index. This is the fifth index. 6, 7, 8, and the 9. These are the index positions. For each and every element partition, it is allocating one index position which always starts from 0. This is the fundamental principle of array. Next, once a partitions has been divided, once a memory has been reserved for each partition, and in these partitions by default it is storing the default value as null. It will store the default value as null. In each partition, it will store the default value as null. It will store null. It will store this null value in each and every partition. Now, this is a functionality will be happening here. If I'm writing this a single line of code, whenever I'm writing this a single line of code, okay, integer customer codes equals to new integer of 10, this much of processing will be happening inside this memory locations here. Then immediately it is going to be calculating how much memory will be required, that much of memory will be reserved. The whole memory will be dividing into various equal partitions, and then for each partition it is allocating the index position starting from 0. In all the position partitions it will be storing the default value as null. This is a functionality will be happening behind the screen upon writing this a single line of code. Now tell me, how can we recognize each and every array element now? How to recognize each and every partition? Hmm. How to recognize each partition now? For example, I'm having this partition. How to recognize this partition now? For example, simple concept. Assume that okay, this is an apartment. In this apartment, we have so many flats. Okay, flat number 0, flat number 1 or 2, 3, like that. Here, assume that there are some 100 flats are available in that apartment here. In this apartment, one of my relatives is staying over there. Today, I would like to meet them. I know this is the apartment name, but I don't know that the flat number. Then what can I do? Do I need to press the calling bell in each and every flat in this apartment? No. Then what can I do? In order to go to that people, we should be aware of two things. We should be aware of the apartment name, flat number both. If you know the apartment name and the flat number both, directly we can go to the apartment, go to that flat number, we can meet the people, we can have the conversation, whatever you want. Like the similar way here also, in order to recognize this value, we should be aware of the apartment name. Apartment name means my array name, along with flat number, that means index position. So we have to use both array name along with index position combination to recognize each and every partition. So in this case, how can we recognize? Now let's see. This can be recognized over here with the help of okay array name. What is the array name? Customer codes of 0. That means index position. Array name along with index position. That means in this particular apartment, in this flat, this is a flat number here. Okay, clear? So each partition can be recognized with the help of array name along with the index position. Now there is the second partition here. How to recognize this second partition now? Customer codes of 1. Right. Next, third partition. How can we recognize this one? Hmm. Customer codes of 2. Next, how can we recognize this one? Customer codes of 4. How to recognize this partition? Customer codes of 6. Next one. How to recognize this partition? Customer codes of 8. Next, the last partition. How can we recognize this partition now? Customer codes of 9. So each and every partition can be getting recognized with the help of array name along with index positions. Okay, understood the concept here? Now, so in this case, as part of this arrays, whenever if we want to deal with the elements, always we have to rely on index position. We have to be depends on index position. Without the index position, we can't deal with the elements. We can't store the elements. We can't retrieve the elements without these index positions because indexes are the base. Indexes are the base as part of arrays. Based on the index only, we can perform the operations. Without the index, we can't do anything inside the arrays. Okay, so that here in this case, if you want to assign some values, by default it is having the default value as null. I don't want to store this value null. I want to assign some value for my array elements here. How can we store the values here? Now let's see. For example, I want to assign some value. Assigning values. How to assign the values? Let me give you the syntax over here. We can specify array name along with index position equals to value. Array name Index position equals to value. Now tell me, for example, if I'm removing this index position, this is looking like as what? Our normal variable, right? Variable name equals to value. But in this case, this is not a normal variable. This is an array variable where I want to store the value in a specific index position. So that here we are indicating index position additionally. That's it, nothing else. Okay, array name along with index position equals to value. Suppose, for example, I want to store some value over here. I want to assign the value. I'm indicating customer codes of 0 equals to 4500. Whenever I'm writing this a piece of code, immediately what will happen? It will store this value 4500 inside my customer codes array in the index position 0. That means it will go to that index position 0. In this index position 0, whatever the element is available, that element value will be getting replaced with the new value automatically here. So whatever the element value that we have, that value will be replacing with the value 4500. Okay, understood the concept here? Now, like the similar way, if you want to assign the value for the remaining elements also, then we can assign like customer codes of 1, 19,000, customer codes of 2, okay, 740, customer codes of 3, okay, some 12,000. Like that, we are assigning the value for each and every partition. Whatever the array partitions are available, for each partition, I'm allocating some value over here. In this case, it will store these values. Whatever the values we have assigned, these values will be getting assigned here. It will store these values. In this partition, what is the value here? 19,000. In the next partition, what is the value? 740. In the next one, 12,000. Okay, like that we can able to assign the value for each and every partition, whatever you want. Based on your requirement, we can assign. Clear? Understood the concept now? Next. So this is to assign the values over here. Once the values has been getting assigned, then how can we get the values from this array? How can we get these values? Hmm. How to retrieve the values over here? Directly we can go to the array, use that array name along with index position, we can collect it here. Now, retrieving the elements. Now, let me give you the syntax. We have to specify the array name along with the index position. Array name along with index position. That's it. Simple. So now let me show you how can we fetch these elements. For example, I would like to collect that. System.debug customer code is, I would like to specify customer codes of 0. And then second customer code system.debug customer code is customer codes of 1. Like the similar way. Customer codes of 2. customer codes of 3. Like that, here we can able to collect each and every element whatever we have. That's it. This is the simplest mechanism here. Clear? So initially we have to define the array over here. Once the array has been defined, then we can able to assign some elements to the array, and then we can get the elements from the array also. Here all these operations we can do with the help of indexes. Clear? Understand the concept now? Now, make a note of this one. Now, while storing the values inside a normal variable, always a variable can hold only one value at a time. Only one value at a time. Now, when the user assigns a new value for the same variable, then it will overwrites the previous value with the new value automatically. With the new value automatically by default. Now, hence, to store a collection of elements within a single variable, we have to use the help of arrays. Arrays allows us to store a collection of homogeneous elements inside it. Arrays allows us to store a collection of elements, homogeneous elements inside it. That is, arrays store only same data type elements, but we can't store heterogeneous elements. Inside the arrays. Arrays will recognize each element based on the index position, which always starts from 0. Which always starts from 0. Now, arrays purely supports static memory allocation. Hence, the array size can't be grow or shrink at runtime. That is, arrays are fixed size collections. Arrays are fixed size collections. Syntax. We can specify data type and the dimensions. Array name equals to new data type, and then here we can specify the size. Note. While defining the array, we have to specify the size. which indicates the maximum number of elements can we hold inside it. Done up to this part? Now, for example, how to define these arrays. Integer, some customer codes equals to new integer of some 10. Now tell me this array can store what type of elements? Integer type of elements. How many maximum? 10. Now it holds maximum of 10 integer elements. I'm defining a string array. Product names equals to new string array of some 100. Now tell me this array can store what? String elements up to maximum 100. It can hold maximum of 100 string elements. ID. Record ID is equals to new ID of 25. Now, this particular array can hold maximum of 25 record IDs. Account array here. Now I would like to specify account records equals to new account of 40. Now this particular array can holds what? 40 account records. The complete account record will be treating as one single variable. So that means one single element. Okay. First element means first record. Second element means second record. Third element means third record. Total 40 account records it can store inside the array. It holds maximum of 40 account records. Opportunity array here. Opti records equals to new opportunity of 50. It holds maximum of 50 opportunity records. I'm giving the position object here. Position records. New position of 15. This particular array can holds maximum of 15 position records. I'm giving this a hiring manager. HR records equals to new hiring manager of 45. It holds maximum of 45 hiring manager records. This is how we have to define arrays inside your Apex program. It may be primitive type of elements also. Yes, subject type of elements also. Always we have to follow the same syntax.
Rose, can you come down?
assigning the values. Once the array has been defined with the required details, then we can store the elements inside the array as below. We have to specify the syntax. We can specify array name along with index position equals to the value. For example, customer code of 0. I'm assigning 2300. Customer code of 1, 900. Customer code of 2, 12. Okay, 12984. Like that, we can assign. Retrieving the values. We can retrieve the array elements with the help of index position as below. Syntax. Array name along with the index position. Now, I would like to specify system.debug customer code is, I would like to specify customer code of 0. System.debug second customer code 1. Like that, customer codes of 2. Like that, we can fetch each and every element from the array. So whenever if you want to manage the elements in the array, always we have to use the help of index position. At the time of assigning the value also, at the time of retrieving the value also, index position is a base. Based on the index position only, we can manage the elements inside our arrays. Then how can we use these arrays? Okay, with the practical, we'll see in tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we'll see the practical concept of array, and tomorrow I'm going to discuss about object-oriented programming. So what exactly object-oriented programming, and then what features are available, we'll see in tomorrow's session. Now, day after tomorrow, that means on Thursday we don't have the sessions because of the elections in Telangana state. So we don't have the sessions on Thursday. And Friday, Saturday we have the sessions as usual.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Excuse me, Firoz.
Yes.
Can you move the page little bit up? Yeah, thank you.
Done with this? Okay. Now, so in tomorrow's session, we'll continue with this practical use case, and then tomorrow we'll see the object-oriented programming. Okay. Thank you.